Ravens flock. I got to get right into this, man. So obviously the trade deadline passed yesterday. The Ravens didn't make any moves. I was actually cool with it. I said a couple of days ago in the video talking about the trade deadline that we had the type of roster that to where if we didn't make moves, I really wouldn't care too much, because I said this is actually one of those years where I feel like we actually do have enough, really more than enough, to go as far as we want, as you know, to get to that Super Bowl run. Again, the biggest issue has just been execution and consistency. So it's, again, I would have been cool if we would have got somebody, but again, I'm still not panicking. However, I see a lot of people panicking. A lot of people are frustrated. They're expressing a lot of anger and frustration, and they feel like, oh, we should have went out and got a running back. The main running back I saw people say we should have got was Derrick Henry. And also, I randomly started seeing people say Josh Jacobs, which to me that felt like the last straw at that point. Derrick Henry and Saquon, I was like, I could kind of see where people are coming from. Josh Jacobs, I'm like, look, man, Josh Jacobs isn't even having a good year. Why are we insisting on disrespecting Gus Edwards, man? So I wanted to do a whole video talking about Gus Edwards again, and give about, more or less 5 reasons why Gus Edwards is more than enough for us to get it done, and why he's underappreciated. And to put the Josh Jacobs things to bed, let's just look at it for what it is, man. Josh Jacobs is the premier back on the Raiders right now. Has more carries than Gus, 133, but still has less yards, less touchdowns, and averages less yards per carry. And this is Gus on a down year when it comes to yards per carry. He's only averaging 4.2, but he's still outperforming Josh Jacobs. But y'all want him over Gus? That doesn't make sense. That's not logical. That's simply based on just the name recognition. That's it, the star power. You can't, this is why I gotta do this video. I got to. I didn't mean for this to be a rant. I'm not ranting, but it's just like we gotta really look at Gus and see his value. Like, look, do y'all know? And I had to look this up because one of the sportscasters during the Cardinals and Ravens game, he mentioned this really briefly and just like flew right by it. But it caught my attention, and I had to look this up to double check. I'm gonna put a graphic up with this. Do y'all know Gus Edwards is 4th all time in our franchise's history? Gus ranks 4th all time in rushing yards. Let that sink in. 4th all time. And if you don't count Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson ranks 3rd, if you don't count Lamar, among running backs, Gus ranks 3rd all time. Let that sink in, man. We are a team that for the past however many years now has had this brand of running the football, and Gus has managed to reach top 4 all-time in rushing yards. Now, some people, they may hear that, they may not be that impressed. They may see that he has 3,000 rushing yards in 5 years and think that's not super impressive, but context matters. Let's really look at this for what it is. Gus Edwards at no point in his career has ever had the opportunity to be the RB1. He's been constantly the 2nd and 3rd option his whole career, and still he's managed to do that. That's really impressive. When you look back at the past 5 years, he's had to share touches with so many people, whether it's the Mark Ingrams, J.K. Dobbins, obviously Lamar Jackson, Justice Hill, like just so many different people he's had to share carries with. He's had to share opportunities with, and still Gus has managed to be that steady presence over the past 5 years. So much so to where he is 4th all time in rushing in our franchise's history. And he missed 2021, but still has managed to do that like that. So he's really only played like 4 years. That is impressive. Even through these 8 games, Gus has only been accounted as the starter for 3 of those games. He still had the bulk of like the touches now, especially the past couple weeks, but still like he's still constantly being put in a position where fans, coaches, Munkin, Harbaugh, they keep acting as if he's not good enough and he's somebody they could use as more of like a backup plan. And I'm even seeing fans in like chat rooms and certain like Ravens different live streams for like Ravens content creators saying, we need to do better than Gus. You know, Gus is an RB2 at best. Gus is not an RB2 at best. We've never even given Gus the opportunity to be the RB1 to see what he's made of. And so far, because this is really his first year where he's really getting that chance, especially the past couple weeks, he is showing that he can be more than enough, man. Like in 8 games, he has 105 carries, 426 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, who's played 7 games and started all 7, and is without a shadow of a doubt the premier back on their team, even though that rookie Tajay Spears is starting to really, take away snaps from him. You know, Henry got 120 carries, 526 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So even though, again, his numbers look better, even though Henry's numbers look better on paper, even though many people will say that Henry is better, and obviously it's fair to say Henry's better, obviously, because he's all the stuff that Henry has done makes sense. But at the end of the day, the gap between a lot of the running backs that Ravens fans want and a lot of the running backs that Ravens fans consider elite, the gap between them and Gus Edwards is really not that big, man. Another thing I want to go into real quick, I also got the graphic up for this too. Gus right now has 6 broken tackles. Well, what they count, I think it's more, but still, like they counted as 6 broken tackles, which puts him at 17th in the NFL. And Derrick Henry has 8, which puts him at 10. So you're not talking about a massive gap here. Like even when you look at first downs, Gus has more first downs than Derrick Henry right now. Gus is tied for 10th in the league with 26 first downs among running backs. Derrick Henry is at 15. He's ranked at 15. He's ranked lower than Gus. When you look at yards before contact, Gus is at ranked 16, and Derrick Henry is ranked 23rd. Now, you may argue, that's a little tricky. Maybe you could argue that that's more a reflection of their offensive line or the scheming. I don't know. Again, I'm not one of the film guys, but still, there's a lot of numbers and stats that go in Gus's favor. Obviously, Gus on his career averages 5 yards a carry. We all know that. We've been saying that. Gus, his first 3 seasons had 700 plus yards. And again, that was while never being the go-to running back. Even now, this season, he still has a serious shot at getting his first 1,000-yard season. He's even on track for having a career high in touchdowns. He's even on track for having a career high in receptions because he's never really been used in the passing attack like that. But you see over the past 2 weeks that if you actually use him, he's just as lethal in that area as well. Now, he may not be as great as Justice Hill when it comes to what he may be able to do in the passing game, but he's still good within his own right. Because, again, you've seen it in the past 2 weeks. Like, you saw that improvised pitch pass that Lamar threw to him during the Cardinals game where Gus, in my opinion, he got far enough for the first down, but they said he was short, but still got 9 yards. And then even in that Lions game, that 80-yard pass, I can't prove it. Again, I'm not one of those film guys, but I'm like 90% sure that play, the way it played out, was improvised. I don't think Gus was meant to be the guy that Lamar kicks it out to. I just think maybe something went left and Lamar just effortlessly just like tossed it over to Gus, and Gus just took it and ran with it. And mind you, also that 80-yard passing play, that play that we had in that Lions game where Gus went off for 80, right now, to this day, 8 weeks into the NFL season, that is still the longest passing play of any team and any player this NFL season. Gus Edwards for 80 yards. And even then, you still have a lot of Ravens fans who act like Gus is still not good enough, and they're saying, "Oh man, if that was Keaton or Justice or Derrick Henry or Saquon or whoever, they would have took it all the way for a touchdown." Listen, it doesn't matter. Look, at the end of the day, Gus is Gus. None of those running backs that people are naming, none of those running backs were able to do what Gus did, because if they had the opportunity to do it this season, they would have done it. Bringing up hypothetical scenarios about how if that was Keaton Mitchell who had caught that pass, he would have went all the way. That's a waste of time. because Keaton Mitchell hasn't been that steady presence. A lot of people in the Ravens flock take Gus Edwards for granted. I hope this doesn't come off like a rant, because I'm not trying to rant, but at the same time, we got to start putting more faith in Gus Edwards at this point. There's no reason not to. I've never seen somebody go out of it. Like, Gus Edwards does nothing but overachieve. That's all Gus does. And it's ironic that a lot of Ravens fans, they love embracing the idea of being like the underdog, which I really don't agree with, because from my perspective, we're the team to beat. I don't care what anybody says. When you got the best quarterback in the NFL, I try to show respect to Mahomes and the Chiefs because, they got the rings, but, let's call it for what it is. When you got the best quarterback in the NFL, when you got the best kicker in the NFL, when you got the best linebacker duo in the NFL, when you got Matabike, who's elevated himself to a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL, when you got a top 3 tight end in the NFL, when you got all this stuff, regardless, I don't care what the outside world says about us, we are not underdogs. We are the team to beat. There's no team out here we can't beat. But regardless of that, a lot of Ravens fans love the idea of being viewed as like the underdogs. But it's ironic to me that most Ravens fans don't like Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is the ultimate underdog story. Like, he simply is. We're talking about an undrafted player who, despite the fact that John Harbaugh constantly overlooks him and doesn't give him enough opportunities, despite the fact that a lot of fans don't even rock with him like that, all he does is overachieve. That's all he does. Like, damn, like, look, in the past 2 weeks, Gus Edwards has 248 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He has outperformed everybody on this offense, not named Lamar Jackson, the past couple weeks. Shoot, even some of the running backs that, people wanted us to trade for, he has outperformed them over the past couple weeks. So while I understand people wanting the team to definitely bolster up wherever they can, and I don't see any reason to panic because we didn't get Derrick Henry, or we didn't, or we didn't get Josh Jacobs. Like, I don't see any reason to panic when Gus is really seeming to really get into midseason form and really seeming to be prepared to have his breakout moment. Because one thing about Gus that his resume shows is that despite being underestimated and despite not getting a whole lot of opportunities, when Gus does get an opportunity, Gus doesn't play around. Gus goes crazy. He takes it and he runs with it and milks it for all he can. So that's even more reason to get excited. And I do believe that whether Harbaugh and Monken like Gus or not, I do believe at this point they have no choice but to give Gus more opportunities. Because now they've been seeing a lot of us over the past couple weeks start to make more and more noise saying, why doesn't Gus get the ball? And they finally started to really give him the ball, and look at what he's done. Again, in the past 2 weeks, Gus has 248 total yards and 3 touchdowns. If any other running back had these type of numbers the past 2 weeks, we would be going crazy. But that's pretty much all I got to say. I mean, again, let me know what your thoughts are on all this. Do y'all feel like Gus is underappreciated? And do you feel like this could be Gus's breakout season? And where do you think Gus will rank by the end of the year as far as not just all running backs in the NFL, but even just running backs in the AFC North? Because when I look around at the AFC North, Nick Chubb ain't playing. That's the only real threat I see as far as other running backs. Every other running back in this division is pretty mid that's not on our team. But again, let me know what y'all thoughts are on us not getting any running backs at the trade deadline. And let me know what your thoughts are on what you think Gus's ceiling is.